Hello everyone, how are you? I extend my greetings to all of you, dear students of Introduction to Literature, and I welcome you to our 10th lecture. Our 10th lecture is a very nice poem by an Afro American writer who is Claude McKay. Our poem for today is If We Must Die. This is page 50 of your book. The poem goes as follows. If we must die, let it not be like hogs, hunted and penned in an inglorious spot, while round us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock at our accursed lot. If we must die, oh, let us nobly die, so that our precious blood may not be shed in vain. Then even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us though dead. O kinsmen, we must meet the common foe. Though far outnumbered, let us show us brave, and for their thousand blows deal one death blow. What though before us lies the open grave? Like men we'll face the murderous cowardly pack, pressed to the wall, dying but fighting back. Um, I think you still remember that previously we discussed the meaning of sonnet and we studied two sonnets. We studied Shakespeare's Sonnet 18 and we studied Shelley's Osmendaeus. Today we are going to study a poem written by a black African writer. And it is really a great achievement that a black American writer rivaled the sonnet that has always been written by white writers like Milton and Shakespeare and many others. This sonnet is divided into three quatrains. Each quatrain has four lines and a final couplet. And if you still remember any sonnet that has three quatrains and one couplet is a Shakespearean or an English sonnet. The first quatrain unfolds as just one sentence, beginning with the eponymous line, "If we must die," which will be repeated twice in the poem. And if you notice that "if we must die" is like if we close type 1. It is very much like saying if death is unavoidable. And of course, these first four lines of the quatrain establish the basic idea of the poem. The speaker and his fellow men are being attacked and they are going to die. And obviously, the power that they are facing is very strong and vicious. Now, the question that raises itself, since we will be talking about an African American who writes about freedom, and inshallah, in the future, you will be dealing with a lot of poems written by Black people on one theme, which is the theme of freedom and abolishing slavery that was practiced, in the past. Black people were sold as slaves for work. So McKay chose the sonnets as the form that is best suited to express strong emotions. Why is that? Actually, because the sonnet has just 14 lines. And therefore, it's really a controlled poem when we speak about structure. Uh, if you want to write a sonnet, you have to abide by the rules of writing a sonnet. If you say, I will write a sonnet, so you are just given 14 lines. But if you want to write a different poem, you might write more. So if you have strong emotions, it's better to express them in a very controlled manner. And the sonnet is the most suitable form that will be used here. The sonnet also reveals the sort of conflict that we have between the black people and the white people. And therefore, we notice that the black and the white belong to two different cultures. And we notice that the white people have always been prejudiced against the black people. And this is exactly the subject matter of our poem. I am sure that in the future you will study a lot of literature written by black people as you study survey of American literature. So why did McKay write the poem? Actually, this poem was an inspiration. He was influenced by what was happening around him. He was a black writer, and his fellow black men were badly treated by the white people, and many of them were killed. And I think you must have read some of these historical happenings sometime in the past. So he has a long experience with discrimination, and therefore he's writing about something which is deeply felt. It is something which is personal. All right. Um, our poet is a Jamaican immigrant who came to America in 1912. And if you remember 1912, it was the peak of racial conflicts. And his particular challenge was not to become integrated into a society that viewed African Americans as second class citizens or even as subhuman beings. And this is not only in one area, but socially, politically, and economically. Uh, and we notice also that people like our poet needed to live, work, and become contributing members of the American society. So our poet came to America in a very difficult time, in a time where it was not easy for a black guy to live in a white society. So, dear students, you can now imagine the situation when you live in a place where you are not treated well and you feel rejected and discriminated against. You're not allowed to mix with people freely and you face segregation. And I mean by segregation to be separated in a different geographical setting. Um, Obviously, if we want to start with a poem, we need first to think of who speaks in the poem. Obviously, the one who speaks in the poem is not identified, but we can guess that he is a black person and he is the speaker who speaks to his allies and even to the enemies. And we notice that the poem is basically a poem that requires the black people to fight back and to resist. Um, we don't know whether the speaker is a male or a female, but as I was reading about the poem, I've noticed that most critics took it for granted that the speaker is a man. And this man has got in his mind some of the ideas that we all know about being strong, courageous, honorable, and being manly. And therefore, we notice that he used the quatrains of the poem in order uh, to encourage his allies or the people who face the same situation to be strong and to fight back. Um, and they say that if you don't fight your enemy will make fun of you. And if you don't fight, you are submissive. And a submissive person is a person who gives up easily. You see, guys, I'm trying to move slowly and to be very simple in my diction, and I'm trying to communicate the ideas as simply as possible. And this is, of course, upon your request. Um, so, the poem, actually, as I see it, is a kind of encouragement for the black people to resist the tyranny of the white people. Um, some poems are often described as occasional. You know the word occasion, and occasional is an adjective here. A poem which is written on a certain occasion is described as an occasional poem. This poem is occasional because it was written in July during a period of time that was known as Red Summer. And Red Summer is an expression or a term that historians use to describe the bloody race riots or happenings that occurred during the summer and the autumn of 1919, when black troops returning from World War One, a war they fought, of course, to make the world safe for democracy, confronted the bitter irony of Jim Crow's life in America. Okay, so let us try to understand the occasion. During the First World War, black and white people fought together. And as they came back from the war, they found that they are still treated as black people, and that the democracy and the freedom they fought for is all false. Now they have to face racial discrimination. If we notice, since our focus has been language devices, if you still remember, we notice that the poet tried to communicate his ideas by using figures of speech. If you look at line number 1, you notice the use of like pigs. And as we know, using like means that the poet uses simile, not metaphor. So he tries to say that a person who is courageous and strong should not die like pigs. But the poem, if you look at page 50, the poem does not use pigs, but it uses hogs. And hogs are also pigs, but they are African pigs. So, if we are to die, that is, if we are forced to die, we should not die like pigs, which are hunted and trapped in a certain place. And the writer continues with his analogy by using dogs without using like. So he's using dogs as a metaphor. And here you can imagine the visual image of hogs which are being attacked by dogs, and the dogs are hungry. They want to eat the pigs, so they are barking like crazy, and they are making fun of the fate of the hogs. No, now, obviously, you can feel that the poet is trying to say to the black people, don't die exactly like hogs, which are being attacked by dogs. So it could mean that the black people are likened to the hogs, and the white people are likened to the dogs. So if we have to die, let us die with honor. So why should we die with honor? Because anyways we are dying and we will be sacrificed. So is blood a cheap thing? Definitely, guys, you know that blood is very precious and valuable. So this blood should not be shed for nothing. So what happens if we try to resist? The poet believes that if you try to show your courage and bravery, even the bad people that we rebel against will have to respect us and to honor us, even when we are dead. Then he says, "Oh, fellow sufferers, those who have the same suffering, we have to fight our mutual enemy." It's true that the number of the enemy is very great if compared with our number, but let us show them and prove to them that we are strong. And if they try to hit us, let us return one killing hit. And who cares if our open graves are right in front of us? We will fight these murderous cowards like men, even if our backs are against the wall. And even while fighting, even while dying, sorry, let us fight. So it seems that the poem is trying to encourage the black people to fight back and not to give up. Giving up is disgraceful, according to the poet, because death is coming anyways. So why should we die like cowards? I think, guys, this reminds you of an Arabic line that we always use in this context. إن لم يكن من الموت بد فمن العار أن تموت جبانا. So we notice that the poem focuses basically on violence, dignity, and resistance. Violence is being practiced against the black people by the white people, and the black people should fight for their dignity, and they should defend themselves, and they should defend their rights, and this is what you might call resistance. It's very much, guys, like in the context of an occupied country where you need to fight your enemy and to take your freedom, because freedom is given, it's not it's taken, it's not given by anyone. No one is going to say to you, hey, come and take your freedom. Now, one important motif here is oppression. You know the verb oppress and the noun oppression, as you can see here. You have the slide. Um, the poem requires people to fight oppression. If someone oppresses you, if someone tries to oppress you or tries to be harsh with you, you have all the time to fight back. And therefore, we notice that the addressee is the oppressed person, wherever this oppressed person is. But obviously, as a black guy, he addresses the oppressed black people and he identifies with them because he considers himself part of them. These people have been deprived of their dignity and their freedom, and therefore they are in a terrible situation. Specifically, when we notice that they are being controlled by their enemies, they are actually cornered by their oppressors. So, taking into consideration that they are in a very desperate situation, the speaker incites them, proposes to them, encourages them to find a radical solution for the problem. يعني a radical solution here means a solution for once and for all, يعني to finish the whole thing immediately. The poem argues that violent, even suicidal acts of resistance are only viable options for this oppressed group, the only way they can reclaim their dignity and freedom. In black and white, the poet here is saying that you are being oppressed, you are being discriminated against, you are being treated violently, so you are left with no choices. The only thing you can do is to be equally violent and to fight back. If you don't do that, you will be exactly like pigs which are being attacked by hungry dogs, which will actually devour them or ravish them. So the overall address is to the oppressed. Then you can feel that if you read the poem carefully, of course, you can read between the lines that the oppressed people are in great danger, not because they are going to lose their life, but also they are losing their humanity. They are being treated like animals. So the speaker in the poem describes the black people are as people who are surrounded by monsters, and monsters, as you know, they no mercy, and mad and hungry dogs who will inflict a thousand blows upon them, and they are outnumbered by the monsters. So these metaphors that we have in the poem indicate that the group of people the poem addresses are a minority, and the black people at that time used to be a minority. They used to be a minority in the. So we notice that the speaker consistently describes these oppressors as horrifying and inhuman creatures. Why? Why do you think he does that? It is actually because the poem tries to prove an important point, that oppression diminishes the humanity of everyone involved in this, both the oppressed and the oppressor. Both of them are dehumanized. The speaker goes to propose a way for the oppressed group to regain its humanity. And this is exactly resistance. How to match violence with violence? Actually, the writer believes that this is the only way that the black people can face the white people. So instead of dying for nothing, they can die while fighting back. All in all, our poem actually offers two options to the oppressed group of people. They can either die like pigs or hogs, or to die like men. But probably the poet is doing that because the black people at that time did not have any other alternative. So they are really in a very desperate situation. So the only thing for them is that to decide how they are going to die, because not all deaths are equal. Now let us tackle the first option. The first option is to die like hogs, and this option will only underline the oppression that they already suffer from. Option two, to die like men, and this will allow them to achieve some sort of freedom and dignity. And this freedom and dignity will be retained in death because they are in a situation where they feel that they are losing their humanity. So their humanity is endangered. So, as a result of their bravery, the oppressors, who are described here as monsters, will find themselves in a situation where they recognize the humanity of the oppressed. And here the writer used the verb to honor them. To honor them is to give them the honor and the value they deserve. As if the poet were saying that when you fight back and when you respect your humanity and your dignity as a human being, even your enemy is going to respect you. So the poem proposes violent resistance as the only way which is left for the black people to keep their dignity in this situation. However, if also this poem indicates that some form of oppression shall always persist, the speaker tries to say that even the monsters we defy, and defy is very much like challenge, shall be constrained, that is, shall be forced to honor us even though we are dead. So how can we attain humanity? Humanity can be attained or gained when the oppressors find themselves in a situation where they have to grant a freedom to the oppressed, because the oppressed have already taken action. So if we look at the poem that way, then we notice that it underscores the persistence of the problem that the speaker is trying to overcome. And you know, the problem is racial discrimination. We notice that we have figures of speech in the poem. And the first four lines are rich with figures of speech. If we start with figure of speech number one, it's an apostrophe. And this apostrophe is in lines 1 to 4. We notice the use of apostrophe. The speaker speaks to a group of oppressed people that we know they are the black people, of course. And apostrophe, if you still remember, as a figure of speech, is the direct address of a person or a thing, whether present or absent. So the poet here addresses the oppressed group of people who are obviously the black, and the speaker considers himself as part of the group. So he calls on them and asks them to fight back. Then we notice the use of simile. The simile shows that the speaker is afraid that his fellow black men will die exactly like African pigs, which are slaughtered and killed by their owners. So the black people, if they, of course, this is if they don't resist, they will be slaughtered exactly like pigs. And he is afraid that if they accept this type of death, they will die exactly like hogs or pigs. Then there is also the use of metaphor. So far we have apostrophe, simile, and metaphor, in which the speaker describes the oppressors, who are the white people here, as mad and hungry dogs. So the tenor is the white people and the vehicle is the dogs. The tenor is al-mushabbah and the vehicle is al-mushabbah bihi. So both metaphor and simile personify the animals. For example, when we speak of certain actions that relate to the human beings and they are attributed to the dogs, this is what we call personification. So the dogs are personified in more than one place in the poem because the poet uses mock, and mock is to make fun of something. So the combinations of metaphor and personification actually allow the speaker to show how the oppressors have no pity, no mercy in performing these violent acts. And in a situation like this, neither the black nor the white can keep their humanity. Okay? So we notice that pigs in general are raised to be slaughtered and to be eaten, and they are kept under tight control, and therefore they don't have the freedom of movement. And you know that the black people suffer from the same problem. So we notice also that hogs can be seen as symbols in the poem. Hogs symbolize the black people, the oppressed people who lack freedom and humanity. So the oppressors achieved something, which is they denied the oppressed their rights, creating something similar to the system of a farm. In a farm, we notice that we have an organized system that limits people's freedom and deprives them of their fundamental rights as human beings. So he is urging the oppressed group not to accept the role of hogs who are being raised in this way. Also, dogs can be seen as a big symbol in the story. Sorry, in the poem. Dogs symbolize violence. They are mad and hungry. So they are used for taking care of animals and hunting them as well. So the dogs are the ones that control the hogs, and they are the ones who murder the hogs. Now we notice that there is something important that we need to look at. Even though the dogs seem to be in control, but actually, if you think about it, dogs can never control farms. They are working exactly under the control of someone else. So, this kind of symbol is so deep that it implies that people who are not free cannot also control others. They are also doing the orders or performing the orders of other people. And this is even worse. If you hurt others because someone else told you to hurt them, it shows lack of character. Also, the use of monsters is a symbol in the story. Sorry, in the poem. So the monsters symbolize the dynamics of oppression, how oppression is performed. So in line 7, for example, the speaker switches the source of symbols and describes the oppressors simply as monsters. Now he moves from the stage of dogs to the stage of monsters. So we notice that the symbol is used to indicate that people who are oppressing to other people are themselves inhuman. So they have a new status, or they have acquired a new status. And this status is the status of the monsters. because they really symbolize the way that violence and oppression degraded them and made them some new creatures. Okay, guys. Upon your request, I'm not going to make um, or I'm not going to give very long lectures and make long speeches. So I have to stop here. And next time, inshallah, we will continue with this poem.